I am Elon Musk. Most people think my story begins with rockets, with electric cars, with Twitter, with headlines that swing between visionary and madman. But none of that is where it truly starts. It begins with a quiet, lonely boy in Pretoria, South Africa, staring at the sky and wondering why the world felt both fragile and unfinished. It begins with fear and with imagination. Because before I ever tried to build rockets, I was trying to build escape routes. I was born on June 28, 1971, in Pretoria. South Africa was beautiful. Vast skies, dry heat, open land that seemed to stretch forever. But beauty doesn't erase isolation. As a child, I was introverted to the point of disappearance. I read constantly. Science fiction, philosophy, physics, fantasy, entire encyclopedias. I wasn't reading to be smart. I was reading to survive boredom, to survive confusion, to understand the rules of a world that didn't seem designed for people like me. At school, I was bullied. Not occasionally, systematically. Once, I was thrown down a staircase and beaten so severely I ended up in the hospital. Pain has a way of clarifying things. You either learn to shrink, or you learn to build internal armor. I chose the second. Books became my training ground. Isaac Asimov, Douglas Adams, Tolkien. Science fiction wasn't fantasy to me. It was engineering in narrative form. It proposed futures and then dared someone to build them. I began asking myself a question that would never leave. What problems, if solved, would most improve the future of humanity? My father was an engineer, technically skilled, demanding, complex. Our relationship was not simple. He taught me to think technically, to dismantle things, to understand mechanical systems. But emotional warmth, that was less available. So I turned inward. At 10 years old, I learned to code on a Commodore VIC-20. There was no teacher, just a manual. Within days, I was programming. Within months, I had built a video game called Blastar and sold it for $500. That wasn't about money. It was proof of leverage. You could sit alone in a room and type symbols into a machine and create value. Code was power, and power meant independence. At 17, I left South Africa, partly for opportunity, partly to avoid compulsory military service under apartheid. I didn't want to participate in a system I believed was morally broken. I moved to Canada first, then to the United States. America wasn't just a country to me, it was a platform. If you want to change the world at scale, you have to operate where scale is possible. At the University of Pennsylvania, I studied physics and economics. Physics teaches you to reason from first principles. Not analogy, not tradition. First principles. Boil a problem down to its fundamental truths, then reason upward. That framework became the core operating system of my mind. In 1995, I dropped out of Stanford after 2 days. 2 days. The internet was emerging. I could feel it. It wasn't just a technology shift. It was a structural reconfiguration of civilization. You don't sit in a classroom during an inflection point like that. With my brother Kimball, I started Zip2. We slept in the office, showered at a YMCA, coded constantly. Investors didn't believe in us at first. Newspapers didn't understand the internet. But eventually, Compaq acquired Zip2 for nearly $300 million. My share was about $22 million. For most people, that's the end of the story. Financial security, comfort, diversification. For me, it was ammunition. I founded X.com next, an online financial services company. Radical at the time. It merged and evolved into PayPal. We were trying to disrupt banking, one of the most entrenched systems on Earth. That doesn't happen politely. Internal conflicts escalated, leadership disputes, strategy disagreements. Eventually, I was ousted as CEO while on my honeymoon. There's a pattern here. Being removed from something you built forces reflection. It strips illusion. When eBay acquired PayPal for $1.5 billion in stock, I walked away with around $180 million. Again, that could have been the end. Instead, it was ignition. I asked myself the same core question. What problems matter most for humanity's long-term survival? 3 stood out. Sustainable energy, becoming a multi-planetary species, the future of transportation, and AI. These were not good business opportunities. They were civilizational bottlenecks. Most rational analysis suggested I should invest passively, hedge risk, preserve capital. Instead, I did the opposite. I invested nearly all of my PayPal proceeds into 3 companies: Tesla, SpaceX, SolarCity. At the time, this looked insane. Let's start with SpaceX. In 2002, I founded Space Exploration Technologies Corp. The goal was simple to articulate and nearly impossible to execute: make humanity multiplanetary. Mars wasn't a publicity stunt, it was a backup drive for civilization. Rockets were absurdly expensive. Launch costs were astronomical because no one questioned the structure. Aerospace operated on cost-plus government contracts. No incentive to innovate. So I applied first principles. What is a rocket made of? Aluminum alloys, titanium, carbon fiber. What is the material cost relative to launch price? Single-digit percentage. So the problem wasn't physics, it was architecture. We would build rockets ourselves, from scratch. The first 3 Falcon 1 launches failed. Explosions, fire, public ridicule. The 4th launch had to succeed. We were nearly out of money. If it failed, SpaceX would likely die. Tesla was also on the brink. 2008 was not a cinematic triumph. It was sustained terror. The 4th launch succeeded. NASA awarded us a contract shortly after. That was survival. Not victory, survival. Tesla was no easier. Electric cars were considered slow, ugly compliance vehicles. The conventional wisdom was clear. Batteries are too expensive. Range is too limited. Consumers don't care. Again, first principles. Battery packs are composed of cells. Cells have a cost curve. Scale drives cost down. If we could build a compelling electric car, not a compromise, demand would follow. The Tesla Roadster proved electric cars could be fast. The Model S proved they could be superior. But scaling manufacturing nearly killed us. Production hell is real. Robotics miscalculations. Supply chain bottlenecks. Cash burn. In 2008, I had to choose which company to fund with my remaining capital. I split it between Tesla and SpaceX. If either failed, I would have gone personally bankrupt. That wasn't recklessness. It was asymmetric conviction. Then came the Model 3 ramp. Media predicted collapse. Investors shorted aggressively. Factories were bottlenecks. Automation was over-engineered. I slept on the factory floor. Not for optics, for throughput. When you compress time, leadership must compress distance from the problem. Eventually, we broke through. Electric vehicles became not just viable, but aspirational. Entire industries pivoted. SolarCity integrated into Tesla. Energy generation plus storage plus transport. Then came the gigafactories. Berlin, Shanghai, Texas. Scale is not just growth, it is defense. Neuralink, brain-machine interfaces. The goal: bandwidth between human cognition and artificial intelligence. AI is advancing rapidly. If humans remain biologically static, we risk obsolescence in our own ecosystem. 1. Neuralink is about symbiosis. The Boring Company. Underground transport to reduce urban congestion. Again, first principles. Digging is slow and expensive. But what if tunneling speed improved dramatically? Then there is Twitter, now X. Information flow shapes civilization. When I acquired the platform, it was controversial, polarizing. But digital public squares matter. Speech constraints shape societal evolution. Not everyone agrees with my decisions. That's expected. When you operate at scale, criticism scales too. People ask about risk. Risk is misunderstood. The biggest risk is complacency. Civilizations do not collapse because they try too much. They collapse because they stagnate. In 2021, SpaceX launched astronauts regularly. Falcon 9 became reusable. Reusability changes economics fundamentally. Starship is the next leap. Fully reusable. Massive payload. Designed for Mars. Not as symbolism, as infrastructure. Mars will not be easy. It will be dangerous. But stagnation on a single planet is more dangerous. I've been called arrogant, detached, obsessive. Perhaps. But obsession is focus sustained over time. You cannot build rockets casually. You cannot rewire global energy systems as a hobby. Intensity is the price. There were moments I thought everything would collapse. Model 3 ramp, Starship explosions. But failure is data. If you treat it emotionally, it destroys you. If you treat it analytically, it refines you. People think I enjoy chaos. I enjoy acceleration. The world moves slowly by default. Bureaucracy expands. Incentives calcify. To bend that inertia, force is required. When I look back, I don't see a straight line. I see compounding bets. Software, capital. Capital, rockets and cars. Rockets, reusability. Cars, global electrification shift. The through line isn't wealth. It's leverage against entropy. If humanity becomes multiplanetary, if sustainable energy becomes dominant, if AI aligns constructively with human intention, then the volatility will have been worth it. I was that quiet child once, bullied, reading alone, looking at the sky. The sky is no longer a ceiling, it's a target. People think my story is about companies. It's not. It's about trajectory. Trajectory is everything. Stay curious, build relentlessly, and don't optimize for comfort. Optimize for impact. Thank you.